All right, let's get over to the Zoom cloud here. And boy, we got some modern technology. We got Jim Willis on the line with us here. He's with the Marcellus Drilling News. He's out of Pennsylvania, I believe. Is that correct?
Well, actually, Jason, first of all, it's great to be with you, as always. Haven't talked to you in a while, so it's always a treat. Um, Actually, I like to tell people I live behind enemy lines,
Oh,
so
you're on the New York side.
I'm on the New York side of the border,
Okay.
in the Binghamton, New York area, which is just to give people an idea. If you Interstate 81 goes north south, and if you went from Syracuse in the middle of New York State on down to Scranton, Pennsylvania, Binghamton is about halfway in between. So um, I always joke and say, hey, Binghamton's on your way to everywhere else because we have several interstates that go through here. And people, I say I'm from Binghamton. Oh yeah, yeah, I've been through there, but they never stop, So
Sure. And when you say behind enemy lines, that's energy policy, that's political
yeah,
policy, more
yeah. Well,
energy.
all of the above actually, but energy certainly. In New York State, we have no fracking, at least horizontal fracking, high volume hydraulic fracturing, which is typical for shale wells. It was written, laws were passed, budget law was passed. I believe it was in, well, got to reach back now into the memory banks, but it was probably about 3 or 4 years ago now, when Cuomo was still the governor. Actually, I think it was 2020, because while COVID was going on, everyone was freaked out by COVID. He kind of snuck in a permanent ban on water-based fracking in the budget law, that has to get passed every year. So that passed, and then just last year, um, a ban was also passed on using carbon dioxide for fracking, which would be an alternative form of fracking, way to do it. And that was done under Kathy Hochul, our current Democrat governor.
Is
So,
that enhanced oil recovery? Is that what they calling it that out there with
well,
the
I
CO2?
mean, you could, you use CO2 with enhanced oil, yeah, certainly, but it also could be used in a way to substitute for water, and
I'm
it
not
can be.
familiar with that. What do you mean by that?
Well, it's forced down into the hole, and it's blown out into the cracks, or it's used to crack, the rock. And instead of water coming back up, out of the hole, out of the borehole, you get CO2 slipping back up and out. And if you capture it,
Sure.
so it's sort of a closed loop system. And it's the latest, it's the greatest, it's the newest. And there was a guy that wanted to try it here and started to snap up all sorts of leases, from people on the New York side of the border with the intent to try it, and that raised red flags with the radical environmental left, and they went to work. And so we have a Democrat governor, we have a Democrat assembly and Democrat Senate. The legislature passed a law against that too, and then the governor signed it into law. So when I say we're behind enemy lines, I mean there's and they love to block pipelines. They love to block gas-fired power plants. So we just we don't want cheap, good energy. We want to pay
Well,
more.
so
So, but
okay.
here's the thing. Here's the thing. Broome County, where I live, and I'm sitting about 15 miles from the border where I sit. The other side of that border is Susquehanna County, Pennsylvania. Now, Pennsylvania is the number one natural gas producing state, in the Marcellus and Utica, and it's number two in the nation behind Texas as far as producing natural gas. And of course, Texas #1 in oil as well. But because of Susquehanna County is the #1 gas producing county in Pennsylvania. So I live 15 miles, from this imaginary line, that, where on the other side of that line, they have some of the best shale rock in the United States. And you got to know it's on this side of that imaginary line too. And if we could only do it here, what kind of bounty would this state have if this was allowed, on our side of the line? But again, we live behind those enemy lines. So
Yeah, New York definitely turned energy into optics. That's for
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
I kind of said for a while that it seemed like they would try it on the coasts, California, New York,
hmm,
and then they would usher it in either through California or and I'm finding out too, Minnesota is another place where they're ushering in some
yeah,
of this very extreme energy policy.
yeah,
And there's no other way to say it, because when you're
yeah,
trying to force energy policy that does not power on a regular, reliable basis, you're gambling with other people's lives at the end of the day.
yeah, yeah, absolutely,
And for
yeah,
people that don't have to worry about those things, they don't care.
yeah.
And it's quite remarkable, really. So, what's happening out in the Marcellus? It's been I saw there was a couple news items that have happened in terms of some acquisitions and a few asset transfers,
Yeah,
but it hasn't been as no, we're only 2 weeks into the year, so we
right.
haven't had any
Yeah,
big blockbusters. What I'm trying to say, like, seemed last year every month
right.
there was at least something big happening. But
Yeah, yeah.
what's happening out in your neck of the woods right now?
Well, when you reached out to me and said, "Hey, let's get on a call and and start maybe doing a review of what's happening here in the Marcellus and the Utica," what happened in 2025 and like what do you see happening in 2026? So I kind of sat down and started to noodle about that. And one of those things, one of my top sort of five things that I've been noodling over, was what you mentioned, which is the mergers and acquisitions and consolidation, that's happening.
Hmm.
There's been a lot of news in that respect in 2025, and no reason to believe that it's not going to continue into 2026. And I can certainly, sort of cycle through some of the
Yeah,
major.
what were some of the big ones that you made note of last year?
Well, #1, probably one of the bigger stories was when EOG Resources, which is you may or may not be familiar with,
Hmm.
but it's a um, really big driller in the United States, and they have some assets internationally as well. But they bought out Encino Energy, or Encino Acquisition Partners, as it's called. It was a $5.6 billion deal, and it was for Utica shale assets. So Encino, came around. I got to remember now. I think it was maybe 4 or 5 years ago. They bought Chesapeake Energy's Ohio assets, a lot of their assets. And when Chesapeake came into Ohio, they were sort of on the northern part of the Utica play, thinking it would be an oil play, a condensate play. So they started to go to work there and quickly ran into a lot of walls. Very difficult to pressure that oil out of the rock in Ohio, the way it sits. So Encino came in And it took them a few years, but they cracked the code. They figured it out. And then on the sort of on the sly, very quietly, EOG started to snap up a bunch of acreage as well. So they had, I don't know, roughly 500,000 acres, I think, that they had leased, sort of on the fringes of the Utica of what was at that time was the drilled Utica. And so they ended up buying Encino and folding that into their own operation. And now they have roughly 1.1 million acres in Ohio. And they've been going great guns. And one of the things that's sort of come around is it's not only the oil, but EOG. This is late breaking news. They released a roadmap, and they've sort of had this gas company within a company initiative going on, and they're now pivoting to sort of focus on natural gas and producing gas and NGLs to some degree.
Do you think
As
that's
opposed
AI
to
related?
absolutely what the CEO said was, basically it's related to, all of these data centers, these
Hmm.
AI data centers, and the what everyone sees as a real rush, and oncoming
Do you
market for.
think that New York would get into the natural gas business, or are they just bypassing it for nuclear?
Um, well, New York was also opposed to nuclear.
Oh, I thought they were getting the 3 Mile Island going or something like
Well,
that, or they're.
that's in Pennsylvania.
Oh, is that
Um,
Pennsylvania? Okay,
yeah,
I get them
but
kind of mixed
but
up
no,
there. But
but
I
there's
thought New
another.
York was trying to get some nuclear going. But
They are.
okay.
I believe up in the it's outside of Syracuse someplace,
Hmm.
where they are working on a new nuclear project under Kathy Hochul, our current governor. So the attitude has shifted when it comes to nuclear.
But that's
Um,
interesting though how they would go to nuclear and not natural gas, right?
yeah,
That's
yes,
unusual because the natural
yeah,
gas is like almost literally turnkey. Like
yeah,
you can, like you said,
yeah,
put up a couple crews on, on your property 20 minutes
yep,
away from the
yep,
from the invisible line and just start,
yeah,
doing the milkshake. Start
yeah.
drinking the
Well,
milkshake.
what
So,
one of the things that so out of my like five different big picture ideas or things that have happened, and besides the M&A stuff, the consolidation stuff, are pipelines, and at the top of that hit parade, and we talk about it now, or we can talk about it later, but probably the biggest story, if you will, that came around in 2025, in my opinion, for me, was the resurrection of a couple of pipeline projects that were dead and buried.
now what kind are they, and what companies were are the spearheads behind it?
Well, it's Williams in the case
Okay.
of both, and one of them was called the Constitution Pipeline, and it was from Susquehanna County, just over the border from me, and it would come up through actually Broome County, where I'm sitting, and it would go up sort of into the middle of New York State, to Schoharie County outside of Albany, and where it would connect to a couple of other pipelines. It would connect to the Iroquois gas transmission pipeline, and it would connect to the Tennessee gas pipeline. Those pipelines would carry those molecules, not only to the New York City area, but also into New England. So it was a really big deal. It was announced back in 2012. And I won't, bore you with all the ins and outs, but I followed it vigorously over the years. And Williams finally buried it in 2020, because they kept hitting a brick wall with New York State. The New York State Environmental Agency, it's called the Department of Environmental Conservation, the DEC, under under the direction of the governors, which was first Cuomo and then later Hochul, kept rejecting it. They wouldn't issue the permits. There was a lot of ins and outs and ups and downs. FERC finally declared that New York had screwed around so long with issuing a Section 401 permit under the Clean Water Act, that they lost their right to do so. And FERC went ahead and waived it, and said, you're good to go. But by that point, Williams had had enough and just said, screw it. We're just going to forget it. And I don't blame them, because they knew that they would continue to hit opposition all along the way. So they shelved it at that point. Well, President Trump comes into office, and within a month, in February of last year, he announced he wants to resurrect that project. And he, proceeded to do a full court press. And so what happened after that is he started to talk with our governor, Kathy Hochul, and they started to what I call horse trade, mm-hmm. And they actually had a meeting, a couple of meetings, I believe, and they started to talk about, well, I'd like to do this, but if you'll do that, sort of thing. And Hochul, there was this business of congestion pricing in Manhattan, charging motorist taxes to go into Manhattan during certain times of the day. And there's this big offshore wind project that Hochul wanted, a $5 billion, I call it a boondoggle, but this major wind project. So they traded. So Trump did a deal with her and said, okay, you can build your wind project, but I want the Constitution pipeline. And I want a second pipeline project that Williams wanted to build, which is an expansion of Transco in the New York City area, off the shore of New Jersey on the bottom of the Raritan Bay to offshore Long Island. They wanted to install some more looping pipeline, a few other things, but that was, the basic part of it. And so Trump said, hey, if you'll allow what's called the Northeast Supply Expansion, NESE, and the Constitution, you can have your offshore wind. At least this is how it's reported, right? So no one actually admits this, publicly, but this is what's been reported. And they did the deal. NESE is a $1 billion project and was much closer to actually being able to be restarted. And so Williams went after that one first and got that one going. And just recently, both New York and New Jersey issued necessary permits for that project. And by all accounts, it's a go, and they're going to start building. Now, the Constitution, Williams returned to that just recently, the one out of Susquehanna County through Broome, where I am, and up into the middle of the state to connect to those two other pipelines. Williams asked FERC to reissue the certificate for the project. And in addition to that, they also wanted FERC to reissue the waiver that they had originally said, hey, New York's out of the picture, so you don't need a sign off from New York anymore. So that just happened within the past month. And I haven't heard yet that FERC has issued those things or reissued them, but I expect it to happen anytime. And when that happens, I expect that project to light off, and to start making progress, major progress. So those two pipelines coming back literally from the dead is, in my opinion, like, it's a miracle. Mm-hmm. And it's a fabulous story, that even in New York State, when you have the right kind of president, that's willing to apply pressure, you can still get things done. So,
and where does that end up going? That piped gas, where does it end up going?
Most of well, for NESE, the molecules are for the New York City area. So,
okay.
Basically the 5 boroughs, Long Island and Westchester County, north of New York City. The molecules that would come from the Constitution, some of them would probably go to New York, but I believe quite a bit of it would go to New England, and New England desperately needs it. And the way it gets there is through a network, first through the Tennessee gas pipeline, and then on from there, connecting to other pipelines.
I do remember last year, and I don't know if this is in your 5 items that made the news, the Marcellus drilling news best of last year or not, but there was it an ethane cracker plant that was a Shell was working on out there,
Yep.
and then
Yep.
the activists kind of got a hold of it, and then the Shell got a hold of it, and where did that end up? Did that last I heard, I think they were
It's
going to up and running, right?
Yeah, it's up and running. Has been up and running. Um, hasn't been without its challenges, quite frankly.
And that's that back and forth stuff I think I was talking
Right?
about.
Yeah.
There was some yeah, some community issues, right?
Correct. Yeah. When you look out your window and you see an orange sky at night because the cracker is flaring again,
Mm-hmm.
that's a problem, and it's happened quite a few times. I haven't heard of anything recently, say over the last 4 or 5 months. I think they've been able to lock that down and get a better handle on what was happening. But it's I guess the long and the short of it is, look, it's here to stay. It's not going to shut down. It gets its ethane from the Marcellus, Marcellus and the Utica, because in that part of the state, it's in western Pennsylvania, near the border with West Virginia and Ohio. And that entire area has a lot of NGLs, a lot of NGL production out there. So they get their ethane right there, abundant supply, cheaply, not going away. The cracker is located in a great area because it's within, like, I forget the statistics, but it's like within 7 or 8 hours of, like 60% of the population of the United States. So there's a lot of manufacturers, within that region. Excuse
That's
me. That
that's an absolutely incredible stat, by the way.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
but
it's
I
a
can see
market.
it being real. Yeah.
But here's the thing: the relatively new CEO of Shell, he's been there what, a little over a year, I think, has said that that particular project doesn't really fit with their portfolio, and made it very clear that they're shopping it. So sooner or later, it sounds like someone else could end up owning it. But it's up and running. It's been okay recently, not without its issues, but hopefully we have those ironed out.
It seems that whenever it gets brought up, people do tiptoe around it. Like
Yeah,
there's yeah, it's different because from my perspective, I mean, I look at those bullet points that you basically said, hey, it's got 7 hours to 60% of the population. A lot of the research I did when we were doing stories on it, it just seemed like it fit a lot of areas that really solved a lot of problems.
yep,
And, I come from agriculture primarily, where you had to look the other way so often for so many things because you were, quote unquote, feeding the world.
yeah,
And, the neighbor's tractor would roll over and, people wouldn't count it as a tractor rollover. They'd count it as something else and, all these different things. So
yeah,
I get how sometimes communities have to just let things go and accept certain things, and companies do too. And I get
yeah,
all that different stuff, but this one is different. This one just seems like it's such a slam dunk as a no-brainer problem solver, but
yeah,
there is this tiptoeing around it. So I'm glad but as you pointed out, I haven't heard anything in 6 months. You haven't heard anything in six
yeah,
months. Obviously, if there was some problems, and who knows, they might have just said, "Here's a couple $1 million, guys, go move. Problem solved." the
Yeah.
couple, I mean, I'm not saying that's what happened, but hey,
No,
it's a
yeah.
solution. And
Right.
yeah, and sometimes those are realistic solutions where instead of fighting 12 people, hey, 12 people, do you want to go live in Bali?
Yeah.
We'd rather
You know,
do that.
Jason, I mean, it kind of touches on a point that I return to time and again, which is, look, this industry isn't without problems. Every industry has agriculture has problems. Um, tech has problems. Every industry, retail has problems. I mean, everyone has problems, right? Um, the thing that is always struck me is that, look, um, let's sit down and talk about these things. Let's be honest about them, right? And not cover things up or gloss over them. Yet the other side, leftists, environmentalists, are not that way. So we say, okay, here's a compressor station, in some neighborhood, and we don't like the emissions and we don't like the noise. Well, let's talk about, different ways to capture those emissions, and let's talk about sound baffles to get rid of the noise. But they're like, no, it just has to be shut down. There's no compromise. There's no middle ground. There's no what I call reasonableness on the other side of this argument. We can admit certain problems on our side, but the other side never does. And they'll never negotiate. They'll never compromise. It's always 100%. You've got to say no, and a lot of that's driven, I think, by this philosophy, almost a religion that that all of this activity causes man-made catastrophic global warming, and therefore it has to be shut down. So no matter, at the end of the day, even if we could reasonably sit down and control those emissions, or in New York State, even if we could reasonably say, okay, we won't use water, we'll use CO2 and frack that way, because then we were not tapping into our precious water resources. No, it's shut it down. No, because that philosophy governs them. That somehow we're destroying the planet by using fossil energy, and that to me is an unreasonable position.
Looking at a lot of the different political regulatory changes that have happened, is there any opening besides those pipelines in the northeast up there that you're seeing? Ohio is getting pretty open
Oh yeah,
with I saw they just actually last night they approved 7,800 acres or something like that of some controversial land. In fact, we when we did the story of the crude life, we took out all the controversial stuff and just wrote it as a regular energy report.
right.
Yeah, I mean,
Which is what it is.
yeah, and I get it
Yeah,
that I'm biased now by taking out opinions by other people, and so
right.
and basically the long and short is they're going to be drilling under a park, and
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Well, well, I mean, yeah, and I was, I just wrote about that, yesterday, today, and again, it's where's the reasonableness that comes into this? So, Ohio passed a law, signed into law by the current governor Mike DeWine in January 2023, and it creates a commission and actually pushes um, the concept of we need to lease some of our state-owned land. Could be wildlife areas, could be state parks, could be state forests, um, but we're going to lease them for fracking underneath, not on top of. No wells, no boreholes in the actual property itself.
Hmm.
You'd have to do that from an adjoining property that's privately owned, right, and run it horizontally underground in order to reach it. So there
Which
would be
they can
no
go
earth.
2 to 3 miles.
Oh, well, they, actually, I've heard
Five
of them
now?
four. I've heard
Four?
four.
Okay. Are
Yeah,
they doing horseshoe too?
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So you've got 4 miles and then horseshoe as well.
Right.
And
Right.
yeah, exactly. I mean, you can literally drill under a park and never
Right.
drive one vehicle on it.
Yeah. So here's the thing, and I wrote about this a while ago, and I reminded my audience again today. Um, so this commission that you were referring to went ahead and opened up some more, like 7,700 acres, whatever it was, 74, 77, of more state-owned land for bidding. It goes through an entire process, and so they opened it up, but they also awarded a contract for a smaller parcel, 178 acres, where they paid, the drillers paying $6,000 an acre for a signing bonus, plus the state's getting 18% royalties.
I couldn't
Talk,
believe that when
talk
I
about a
saw
sweet
that.
deal, right?
I saw that and I was trying to remember the name of the company off the top of my head and I can't. Do you got it off the top of your head?
Yeah, Grenadier Energy.
Grenadier Energy, because it stood
Yeah,
out to me. I'm going, oh, it's even
yeah,
got a cocktail name to it. Look at them. They're
yeah,
just they're doing the tip of the sky cap there. It was just, I couldn't believe that when I,
yeah.
and
So so
go
so
ahead. Yeah.
anyway, yeah, but so the commission, um, at this meeting, went through all this business, and of course, anti-drillers, anti-fossil fuelers, I call them, showed up as they always do every single one of these meetings, and they complained. They addressed the commission and talked about all of the terrible things that will happen, and if something like this takes place. And what I pointed out is this commission did this a few years ago with parcel under I believe it's the state's largest state park, Salt Fork State Park. And I haven't been there, but by all accounts, it's a beautiful park. It's heavily attended, by residents of the state, people outside the state, and so they leased some of it, a decent portion for fracking underneath it. And they started to do the fracking. They drilled and they started to do the fracking. And an enterprising reporter went out and, buttonholed a couple of people that were hiking in the park or something. And they didn't even know what was going on. I mean, you can't hear it. You can't see it. It's, a mile or 2 miles, down. If it's the Utica layer, it's closer to 2 than it is to 1. And nothing. So all of these, predictions of environmental holocaust never come true. And yet, they show up at every single meeting. But the commission, to their credit, they listened and they didn't say a word, which is what I said is how it should be handled.
When I was reading the press release on it or whatever the information I got on it, and I'll be honest, if there's some concerned landowners, if there are some concerned mineral owners, I'll print it. I
Sure.
mean, hey CEO, you need to know what this
Yep.
landowner has a legitimate concern.
Sure.
But if it's just throw the baby out with the bathwater because I'm getting paid to protest,
Yeah.
you're not getting in. And that's one of the reasons I respect what you do. And I try to do the same thing, which is true reporting and true journalism. And it's not being biased for the industry. No, actually, if I was working for the Scranton News, that's how I'd do the same story. I would, if some paid protester was paid to show up and be an agitator and throw out the 1% tile of fear, no, I'm not going to print that. Are you kidding me? And it's amazing how you can get lumped in because you won't gang up on people. Basically, that's I look at them as and in the oil and gas industry, you're not innocent either. You've got bullies too. But
Yeah.
the environmental industry, you've got some bullies, and the
Yeah.
tactics they use are ruthless,
Yeah.
absolutely ruthless. They use emotion as a weapon like I've never. An oil and gas bully, they'll just try to use, slickness and the John Hughes 1980s movies classic bulliness, go up and push you, and
Yeah.
kick dirt in your face, that type of
Yeah.
thing. These new age bullies, man, they'll take your heart and twist it and pretzel your soul and all kinds of different things before you even knew what happened. Oh yeah, I mean, I've said this for a long time. I got a real problem with Greta Thunberg, and my
Yeah.
problem isn't her. It's the people who elevated her to the position of power that they put her in, to where
Yeah.
she became the keynote at some global summit on climate change. And this poor guy who, got his PhD from Oxford, he got second fiddle and usurped by a 16-year-old. How is that a thing? Like
Yeah.
that in my educated mind should never happen in a civilized world.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I just got on my soapbox there, but
No,
that
no,
stuff
I
bothers
agree.
me when you use children as a weapon and when you use emotion as a weapon.
Yeah.
And a lot of what's happened, I truly believe this. You're in New York. Is that happening out there? I mean, are they emotionizing everything out there in order to pass? In Minnesota, they are. Like in Minnesota, they're using
Yeah.
emotion to get funding left and right. We've got a daycare Somali thing that's happening here that the vice president, now the president, stepped away. Tim Walz, the governor, he was going to run for president. And we're not that far away from a few other places too. So it seems like it's a different kind of bulliness that's happening here, and it's happening with people's lives. It's not just give me your smokes, give me your lunch money. You know what I mean, Jim?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll let you
Yeah.
talk here,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
what's it like there? I mean, how are they getting away with this, I guess, in New York?
It's New York is an interesting state. It's really almost two states. New York is, New York City, Westchester County, Long Island, sort of everything on the other side of the Hudson River, maybe up to Albany, and then the rest of the state. Um, Buffalo, Syracuse, yeah, pretty liberal, when you get into the center city itself. But everything else, I I did a study and published a post about this. I think it was right after the last election, and it showed all of the counties that voted for Trump for president in New York State. And if you look at that map, the mass of New York State is red.
Sure.
It's just a few places, including New York City, which is the biggest city in the United States, that are blue. And so it's really a tale of two states.
Minnesota's the same way. We've got a big blue dot for Minnesota or Minneapolis, St. Paul, and then there's a smaller blue dot, Rochester, Mayo, and then
Yeah.
the rest is red. The
Yeah.
the whole rest of the state is completely red,
Yeah.
and it's but because they have the population, they control the state, and
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, and so you see it actually because that's where a lot of the money goes, and then it
Yeah.
never gets to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, that's
Yeah.
the long and short of it. And so,
Yeah.
boy, I tell you, I didn't mean to get this depressed during this conversation here, Jim.
No,
So
I understand.
let's
Well,
let's
let
see
me
what
give you
else is going on here. Go ahead.
yeah, just a brief, so one of my big hits, aside from pipeline resurrection, is and there are other pipelines that are coming too in our region that are going to help, namely something called Mountain Valley Pipeline Southgate. It's an extension of the Mountain Valley Pipeline.
No, is that
And
MVP?
MVP Southgate.
And we're
And
talking natural gas here, correct?
natural gas,
Yep.
yeah. And that will go from southern West Virginia, I'm sorry, southern Virginia into northern North Carolina. So it'll deliver quite a bit of gas down into the south, right?
Now, is that
Where
Duke Energy territory down there?
Yep, Duke is there,
Okay.
absolutely. And there are some other ones, but Duke is the big one for sure. And
They've
then
had a lot
Williams,
of they had a pretty good year last year. Duke did
yep,
made some big changes
yep.
in a lot of positive ways. I thought I guess they were doing a little bit of wind. I can't really put that in the positive category, but hey, win in Rome out there. I guess whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
So
And Williams as well with another extension of Transco in the same general vicinity as the Southgate project. So between those two, if they both get built, that would be another 2+ BCF a day heading down into the south, and that's really good for us. So pipeline resurrection, pipelines heading to New York City and to New England, and then pipeline flows heading into the south. That's a really big story, right? Another one is our AI data centers, and we kind of danced around that a little bit. But back in July, newly elected Pennsylvania Senator Dave McCormick, and he's been terrific, held an event in Pittsburgh. It was called the Pennsylvania Energy and Innovation Summit. President Trump was there. Half of his cabinet was there. Lee Zeldin, EPA administrator, Scott Bessent, Treasury Secretary, Chris Wright, Energy Secretary, Howard Lutnick, Commerce Secretary, and Doug Burgum, Department of Interior Secretary. They were all there. And at this event, they announced $92 billion worth of investment has been promised for Pennsylvania, all related roughly to the topic of AI data centers. And that's private investment. I mean, it's just mind blowing. I don't know how you can even conceive of that kind of number, right? So the problem is, I'm afraid Pennsylvania is going to screw it up because there's so much regulation, and they kind of fritter around with things, getting things approved. Just as an example, there's formerly the largest coal generation power station in Pennsylvania, in Homer City. It's called Homer City Generating. Indiana County, it's about 50 miles east of Pittsburgh. They're going to build a 3,200 acre facility for data centers there. And they're going to build its own gas-fired power plant to power it. That plant is going to be 4.5 gigawatts. That's 4,500 megawatts. And I researched it, and that is the largest gas-fired power plant in the United States when it gets built. So,
and that'll
of course,
be just for that data center.
Dedicated to that data center. Yep. And of course, it's both the power plant and the data centers are being challenged in court, by the left. But I'm hopeful. I think it's going to come through. Now, across the border in Ohio, Williams, the pipeline company, right? Huge pipeline company, has a subsidiary now called Will Power, WILL-Power. And they announced that they're going to build a couple of gas-fired, Utica, Marcellus gas-fired power plants in a suburb of Columbus. And those two projects, one of those projects they announced, and it took 90 days from the first announcement in the application to Ohio's full approval of that project. 90 days. That doesn't happen in Pennsylvania.
No, well, I was going to ask, how was it fast tracked that quickly? And they, by the way, they would get it done in North Dakota as well.
Yeah.
I mean, they got permits done, I want to say in 3 days in North Dakota in some instances. Yeah, it was they used it as a an example one time to get the Bureau of Indian Affairs to not go through. It was 3 steps, not 3 days.
Right. Right.
So to do a private one, it was like 3 steps, and to do the on reservation, it was 47 steps.
Right.
And
Right.
by the time, yeah, I mean, by the time the private one got going, the BIA hadn't even returned the email yet. So I mean, it was just anyway. So go ahead. Sorry, I was.
Well, it's just, I mean, it's a different regulatory environment. Republican legislature and Republican governor, and they're just clearing away all the obstacles.
They
And
did
making
sign
sure
too
that,
the carbon poor stuff too. I noticed
mhm,
the and this is fracking the industry, to use an industry term.
right.
There are people in the oil and gas industry that are falling on either side of this. It is fracking the industry is what I'm getting at. It's fracking the
Yeah.
Republican Party too.
Yeah.
But Ohio is following the way of North Dakota,
Hmm.
and North Dakota's got issues. Uh, there were some people that tried to get it by the landowners because the landowners found out about it by attorney instead of by the state. So I think I'm correct by saying tried to slide one by the goalie there. I'm trying to tiptoe myself here by not ticking
Yeah, I
off.
know. I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
You don't want to get your
I don't want
you
to
don't
tick
want to
off
get
any.
your knuckles wrapped.
Yeah, but at the same time, I do with the crude life. We made the conscious choice that when the line is drawn in the sand, we're going to try to side with the landowners and the mineral owners first. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, from their perspective.
Which is frankly, which is typically what I do too.
Yeah, and so and there are some companies that they don't like that. It's the George
Yeah.
Bush. You're either with
I've
us or
heard
you're
from them
against us.
sometimes. So
Yeah, it's right, George Bush. You're with us or you're against us, and some people
yeah.
are still going by that
Yeah.
mentality. It did them well back then. So hey, if it ain't broke,
Yeah.
don't fix it.
Yeah.
But South Dakota passed the law that you can't use eminent domain now, and so that put a huge hiccup in North Dakota because that's the terminus to where they're going to store all that CO2,
Right.
and then they
Right.
want to take the CO2 and turn around and use it for enhanced oil recovery. But
Right.
the company got ahead of themselves and said we're not going to use it for enhanced oil recovery because they wanted to get the tax credit. And then they went ahead and passed another law for a different tax credit later, and they can't go back and
Mhm.
change their story. So now they're going to say, oh, we're just going to go to Wyoming. And so Ohio basically is learning from North Dakota's mistakes and
Yeah.
trying to do a few things. And so Ohio might have a little bit of a carbon pipeline problem coming, or they might have solved it and said, hey, we saw what happened in North Dakota, and we don't
Yeah.
want to go down that path. But I do know that they did sign a lot of things that made it easier for the companies now to create a carbon industry. We'll just say that there's now going to be in the next year or two a very robust carbon industry in Ohio, and it might help with enhanced oil recovery. Certainly going to help with research because with any sort of carbon industry, you get gobs of federal research dollars coming into your universities. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Ohio State's going to be good in football next year. I mean, I'm not sure how they're connected, but they
They're
are.
always good. Yeah.
Well, there's a reason that all of a sudden Texas got the number one wide receiver in the to go with Archie Manning, and the oil companies back there just like, finally, we got him. Oh, it's just that's a college, a different story for a different day. But what are you reporting on Ohio then for just overall for the industry for next year? How are you looking at Ohio? Because I look at 2025 as they really set the table for 2026 to take off.
Yeah. Well, two things come to mind. As far as Ohio goes, what I've been noticing, I mean, I, you know, I write about poor rights occasionally. I'm not, I haven't done a lot of reporting on that. So I'm still coming up to scratch on that myself. But when I think of Ohio and what's ahead for Ohio and what's been happening, I've been noticing a lot of the leasing and new drilling, I believe, is going north again. So when back in the day, the first guy to recognize Ohio, the Utica, was Aubrey McClendon. The first big sort of focus on it, and he said famously one time, the Utica is the biggest thing to hit Ohio since the plow. And he was convinced that it was going to be an oil play, and then it wasn't. It kind of turned out, a lot of NGLs, but a lot of methane, a lot of natural gas was coming out of that play. Well, now with EOG and Encino joint merging, and the technology that's come along. The areas that were originally targeted up sort of in the northern part of the play were left, and were left alone, and no one was drilling there. Now they're starting to drill there again, because they're finding, that it does work. The oil does come from that area. And so maybe in the end, Aubrey was right, and he
This
had
is
the right idea.
so this is kind of a naive question because I'm really not as familiar with the Marcellus Utica play as I am with, say, like the Bakken, or the
Sure.
Permian, or even
Yep.
Texas. Uh, is there any offshore drilling? Because I'm looking at the map here, and as you say, northern, and you get
Hmm.
into the water there, and these are Great
Yeah.
Lakes. I mean, it's not
Right.
an
Right. Yeah.
ocean, but it is an ocean. Okay, it's a
Right.
sea.
Yeah.
It's a
It
sea.
is. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Lake Erie, for sure. And the short answer is no. I don't know of anyone that has even talked about wanting to drill offshore, in the Utica. Um,
That would give
if
some
you,
heart attacks, wouldn't it?
it would. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it would for sure. And I would understand that. There's a lot of shipping that takes place, in the Cleveland area, and
Hmm.
around the areas where this would potentially reach. But the thing is, I believe it sort of tapers off in that area too. So I'm not, when you're right along the edge of these plays, it's not always the best place to extract anything from. So I haven't heard anything. I haven't heard anyone talk about it. I mean, once or twice I've heard, an environmentalist squawk about, drilling in Lake Erie and stuff like that, and it's just scare tactics,
Yeah,
basically.
I honestly, I've never heard of anybody
Yeah.
drilling in the Great Lakes. I've only heard
No,
of, like,
no,
Nestle
no.
taking the water or whatever and bottling it up and things like that.
Right,
But out of
right.
all the conspiracies and all the
Yeah.
upset environmentalists, I've never heard of that. And I was looking at the map going, well, there's a little bit of gas out there in the water.
There is,
So,
yeah. But
yeah.
here's the thing though. The Utica actually does does reach up into Canada. And if you look at if certain maps, you can see that there's a lot of Utica under Quebec. And unfortunately, Quebec has banned, fracking,
Hmm.
the way New York State has, and just will not allow it. There's a company up there, Questair, something like that, that owns like over 1 million acres of Utica up there.
Okay.
Never been able to drill a single well into it, because Quebec has banned it. So yeah, it does go north, and it goes north up under New York State too. In fact, the Utica goes further north than the Marcellus does in New York State. It goes all the way up in the middle of the state, I guess, before it thins, and then I guess maybe it reemerges up in Canada. I'm not sure how that works, um, but yeah. So yeah, but
Interesting.
lake drilling, I don't think so. I don't think you're ever going to
Yeah.
see. And why? In fact, if New York State tomorrow rolled out the red carpet and said, "Come drill in our Marcellus for natural gas, we want you," I'm not too sure people would. Why? Why set up in a completely new area, and have to, new offices, new supply chain, new everything that you would have to set up in order to do it when everything's already well established and has been for over 20 years in Pennsylvania and Ohio and West Virginia. And their regulatory, regimes are a lot better than ours. So, and it would be the same with lake drilling. It's like, are you kidding me? All the things that you would have to do something like that. Why even bother? There's no reason to do it. So,
I bet Canada would get involved too.
oh, I'm sure they would.
Yeah, because of the water. Absolutely.
Sure. Yeah. There's when you mentioned port rights, it triggered something else though that I didn't have in my notes, but it made me think about. And that's in Pennsylvania, actually in Susquehanna County in particular. There's another sort of landowner related issue like port rights, where a couple of facilities have set up and they buy produced water from producers, from the drillers, and they extract lithium from it, and to resell lithium on the theory that lithium's like it's not a I guess it's not a rare earth, but it's like the rare earth. It's one of those elements that you need for batteries, for EVs and things like that.
It's got the value of gold.
Yeah, it's very valuable. So, but here's the thing: when a driller drills a Marcellus well, and you punch down a mile down, and for basically the rest of the life of that well, you're going to get water out of there, right? It's water it's not from the water table, so people understand it's water from the depths. There's naturally occurring water a mile, 2 miles down, and that water is very minerally, has lithium and other things in it. And so what do you do with that? Well, drillers have to pay to dispose of it. And depending on the leases that they have with landowners, maybe they share that cost. It's a post-production cost, right? Or it's a part of producing that good that they're going to turn around and sell. And so if their lease allows it, then typically there'd be some sort of deduction for that expense that they either have to recycle it, that costs money, or they have to inject it someplace. They have to haul it to an injection well. And Pennsylvania doesn't have a lot of injection wells. They have maybe 14 or 15. Ohio has over 100 of them. And so chances are it gets hauled to Ohio, to get rid of it. So that costs money. Now, all of a sudden, these same drillers can either get rid of it for free or maybe even earn a little coin by selling it. But some landowners are up in arms because they think that some of their minerals, quote unquote, are being sold.
Oh, this is interesting.
And profited on.
Oh, yes.
You're not getting a cut.
Okay, now.
So the landowners, so if I can, and I have good landowner friends that I love, they don't want to pay, to get rid of it when it was disposable, but now they want to get paid, a royalty if someone's going to make some money on it. So,
boy, I got to tell you, this is what happens when you have champagne problems.
Yeah,
is that if you focus on your champagne problems, you're going to end up eating pork and beans, man.
Yeah.
That's what ends up happening, because when you could sit down and nitpick over produced recycled water minerals, that's a good problem to have. And it really is. And that's something that, that maybe, Jim, you should point that out to both sides. Like, hey, guys, but before you get too far calling each other names here,
right?
This is a champagne problem. And this is something that is definitely solvable before you both say something you're going to do. But but what a great solution. What a great solution to a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, because recycled water is that's one of the big issues on the planet. I mean, you want to talk about AI's biggest challenge? It's not the grid. It's the unspoken water issue that nobody will talk about yet, and they're going to
yeah,
be forced to talk about next year because they're sucking up all the water. And
yeah,
oh yeah, we've got this issue in North Dakota already happening where
yeah,
like part of a couple, these text chains, and so one
hmm
of them, there's a bunch of reporters across the state that for some reason I'm still on the text chain. I don't really respond much because I'm afraid they're going to kick me off. So I just kind of stay quiet. You know what I mean? Just stay
yeah,
quiet. Like, ooh, that's juicy. And well, because I don't really do much in the state anymore. I'm outside doing the crude life and other things and whatever else. But they, like I said, they're nice enough to keep me on it. But there's some percolating now in these AI communities about the water. It's not
oh
even
yeah,
the grid, it's the
yeah,
water. And so,
yeah. They use it to cool, the
yes.
facilities because they're, massive heat generators with all these chips and fans and things, going off. So
And this is
they,
where I think the oil and gas industry and this company that whether they're buying the water or horse trading or doing a consignment deal or whatever the case is, that's the right direction. That's what I'm
yeah,
getting at. That's the right direction, is to reuse this water and figure out a way for everybody to get a little piece of the pie. That's all. And
yeah,
good for
yeah,
the landowners, by the way,
yeah,
stepping up saying,
yeah,
whoa, 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 hang on
yeah.
here now. Hold on. And
It is,
that's what
it is,
happens. Yeah, go ahead.
it is. Well, I was going to say, it's an interesting, sort of issue it's coming around. So keep an eye out for it.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to, because that's that was an issue in North Dakota with the flaring as well.
Right,
Because the landowners were coming back and saying, I don't care what you do with those molecules. You said
right,
you were going to pay me. I don't care if you burn it or it goes in the pipeline. Where's my
right,
money, pal?
right, right. Yeah,
And, and of course, I'm just going, yeah, well, I kind of side with them on that. So,
yeah,
sorry, Conoco. Normally I
yeah,
side with you, but on that one,
yeah,
I kind of see his point. Although
yeah,
I do see your point with the bottom line and the person signing the check. But I would be on Conoco's side if I was signing the check on that one, to be honest, because
yeah, yeah,
that's that's a problem you don't want to be anywhere near, Jim. That's not a
yeah.
champagne problem. That's a
No,
don't invite
yeah,
me to the room party
yeah,
problem.
yeah.
All right. Well, what's the main event happening this week, and what do you got kind of planned for dropping? Because you kind of you do you drop them kind of one at a like one shot, or do they trickle in?
My,
Or
my modus operandi from the beginning when I started to do it full time is it's daily. It's Monday through Friday, and it's all news driven. So I have pretty extensive network of filters and little searches that I've done that alert me to things that may be of interest, and I'm just on the hunt all the
Mhm.
time. Sometimes people will send me story ideas, and that's great, and I appreciate that. I might have missed it otherwise if they had sent it along, but I'm basically a news driven kind of person. And when I started it, started writing as a hobby back in 2009, actually. And it wasn't until 2012 that I started to do it full time. Um, but when I started to write it, it was purely from the landowner's perspective. And as time went on, I sort of determined, there are two sides here, and I think both sides can work together. And my approach has always been, I'll discuss the good and the bad. I don't intentionally cover it up. I don't sensationalize it. I try to be even-handed in my coverage of it. But since that time, I mean, since 2012, and I've just been pumping this stuff out. Yeah, there's been some days when the news has been a little thin, but for the most part, I have too many things to write about.
Yeah, I didn't realize you started as a blogger.
Yeah, it's
I
just
mean, if you started in 2008, you were a blogger, man.
yeah, it was a blog.
Yeah.
It was purely, it was just a hobby, and it was to try to figure out and write about this, something that happened um, in the same county I'm in, two townships over. when this company I'd never heard of called XTO Energy
Yeah.
signed a bunch of farmers to a contract to drill natural gas in New York State, right? In Broome County and Delaware County, these counties that joined. And some of those farmers became literally overnight millionaires with the signing bonuses.
Yeah.
And so when that happened in 2008, caught my attention, and I started to write about it as a blog. Blogging was still relatively new then, and I started to write about it to sort of figure out blogging for my day job, which was being I was vice president of marketing for a small British publisher, a bunch of people that I'd worked with in a previous job, and had a nice little company. So I wanted to use blogging for marketing purposes. So let's do it as a hobby over here on the side and see what happens, how I can do it. And so I learned it, that way. And then over time, it got to the point where it grew, it kept growing. And eventually, my wife said, "Hey, this hobby that you're spending 2-3 hours a day on, maybe I'll make it pay." So, so she kind of pushed me, and I took the leap, and I haven't been sorry.
Well, I didn't realize that, you started as a blog, and I was going to ask you if you had any publishing background, and it sounds like you did.
I did. Yeah, I worked, I got my feet wet early on when I was very young. Post living and working in Washington, D.C., actually, for a time in the Reagan White House, and also over on Capitol Hill for a congresswoman from Maryland. But after that experience, got married, moved back to my home area here in upstate New York, and started to work for what then was called a newsletter publisher, a specialty publisher, and publishing on IT in the financial markets. So I was there at the dawn of the PC, right?
No wonder you went to oil and gas. You had to get some excitement in your life. Wow.
I was, the PC was just coming around, and Wall Street was starting to use PCs, and analyzing stock trading and things like that. And so the company I worked for, and I wasn't on the editorial side, I was on the marketing side, actually. So that company, was publishing multiple newsletters in that area: trading systems technology, micro ticker report, FX.
How to go from punch card to SIM card.
Yeah.
People don't realize that our banking system was on circular punch cards in the 70s. But anyway,
so I grew up cutting my teeth on newsletters, and I mean, we printed newsletters and mailed them. That sort of. This is before email. I think I was the first person in the office to actually get an email address, and I had to do it on the sly. The owner didn't like it,
Mm-hmm.
So
well, that makes sense then.
And then blogs came along, and I thought, this is just an electronic version of a newsletter. It's the same thing, and I know that industry. So
well, and that's the part that that gravitated me to your site, was that you have a traditional publisher's approach to it, which made me believe that you just came from journalism. But it was more of the way in I always call them in publishing, you can always tell a newspaper by their court reporters.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I looked at what you did with like permits. Like you were one of the few people that would actually do permits and analyze permits in the way a newspaper would do a court reporter.
Right.
Because those court reporters, that's how you found out the millionaire was getting divorced. That's how you found out the so-and-so's property was they were the ones that would bring back the gems. Yeah, absolutely.
Great insight. Because the permits I determined early on were an early signal.
Yes.
Where is this activity going next? Because these people, these companies are not going to spend 10 grand on a permit and then not drill a well. So if you want to know what's coming, it's just like a little mini crystal ball.
Mm-hmm.
Then follow the permits, and you'll see what's going on, where it's happening.
And then, so your site now, it's Marcellus Drilling News, Marcellus
Correct.
Drilling.
Well, yeah, the URL, I mean, the name is Marcellus Drilling News, but my URL is marcellusdrilling.com.
Yeah, that's it, marcellusdrilling.com,
Yep.
and keeps you up to date on the different permits and some of the other activities.
Yep.
Excuse me, coffee burp there. And daily updates as well. And what do you charge? Charge a month now?
It's $7.95 a month, or if you want to save yourself a couple of months worth of subscription, it's $79.50 per year, $79.50 per year.
So there you go. And
And
like
and
I,
and, and if I can just if
yeah,
I could just say, so people say, well, why would I pay for news that's, I could probably get for free if I sat and sort of, ran my own searches and kind of looked around a little bit. And what I say is, two things. Number one, I'm doing this 6, 8 hours a day, so you don't have to. So I just saved you how much money of the time that you would spend doing this. And number two, since I do it every day, I'm immersed in this, so I remember, and I use my own site actually to go back, and I connect the dots. I say, okay, this is what happened a year or two or 10 years ago, and this is why it's important. This is why it isn't important. So I not only give you the news, but I try to contextualize it a little bit and provide something around that news so that you have a better understanding. You can better understand what that news is and why it's important or why it's not important. So that's what I do. And I think, $79.50 for a year, I think is a real bargain to have, an expert sitting on the corner of your desk, helping you every day.
well, for $80 a year, you can get the best leads list you're going to get because
Yeah.
by having somebody like I've mentioned before in the newspaper, it was the court reporter that would come back because not only would they come back with the divorces and the actual, the business who's suing who, but the new business permits. Okay,
Yep.
this is the okay, and if you're an attorney, well, you need those the
Yeah.
divorce court records. If you're
Yeah.
in marketing, you want to know who you got to call up and say who needs new
Yeah.
business cards and
Or,
signs and everything
or if
else.
you're, yeah. So, so if you're I mean, if you're I don't
Anything
know
in the
if
supply
you're a
chain.
pay if you're yeah if you're a an earth moving company or a paving company or something like that, you're going to want to know if this activity is coming in your area so that
Exactly.
maybe you can get a piece of that action. If you're a landowner, you want to know if, oh, hey, maybe the drilling is heading in my direction, and yeah, I have a lease on my desk, maybe I ought to pick that off again, take another look and say, should I sign it? Should I not sign it? What's going on here? So everyone, can sort of get their own, piece of action there if they pay attention.
Oh, I used to tell bankers, that hey, if you subscribe, you could just call everybody we interview or everybody we do a story on and say, "Hey, I saw that your so and so got interviewed." And there I go, there you go. You just
Right.
got yourself a sales call.
Yep.
We opened the door for you and we didn't even try to do it. And the same thing
Yeah.
for you. I mean, a banker could subscribe to you and say, "Hey, I just saw you guys sign some mineral lease. Let's go get some lunch. I bet we could
Yeah.
do something better."
Yeah.
All you got to do is
Well,
get one of those a year, right?
well, actually, I have quite a few bankers that subscribe. So
That's what I'm saying. These are not dumb people because they
no, that's
realize
right.
like, okay, this
Yeah.
all I got to get is one piece of business and it's paid for forever. Okay, I got it.
Yeah.
Because really we're talking $1 million deals for a lot of these different people. But
Once if I never disclose, I can't disclose for privacy reasons, who subscribes and who
sure.
doesn't. But now that he's dead, I can tell you that Aubrey McClendon used to subscribe. So
So there you go. And I
there
tell
you
people the
go.
same thing. I say that I'm now entering my 15th year doing this. And I would not be doing it still if I didn't have that core group
Yeah.
of subscribers that I know and I can look at and say, oh, gee, okay. Like
Yeah.
seriously, like year 4 or 5 into it, I noticed that I had this core,
Yeah.
and I spent time searching them, and I'm like, oh, well, he's a millionaire. Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
there's another millionaire. Oh, there's another
Yeah.
mill, and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, this is a pretty high affluent audience here. And then
Yeah.
that's when the My Pillow stuff came, and I was getting $2,000-3,000 checks in the mail from My Pillow, and I'm going, okay, well, this is okay then. All right, this is, and they're active if you get the right stuff in front of them.
Yeah.
You just got to get
Yeah.
the right stuff in front of them, and then My
And
Pillow.
it always makes me think, you and I are in the wrong business.
I know. I know.
Because I don't make $1 million a year, I'll tell you that.
No, the media business, that's a sucker business, and you
It
know it,
is.
man.
Yeah.
But
You do it because you love it.
I was going to say, somebody said to me once, well, why don't you get out of it? And I said, I've tried, but I don't know what else I'd do.
Yeah.
I just don't, I'd go into a company and I'd start trying to be the marketing person, because that's what media people do. They start trying to
Yeah.
tell the story,
Yeah.
and that doesn't go over well unless they want the story told.
Right.
So, at any rate, well, with that, Jim Willis, the Marcellus Drilling News, subscribe. 2026 should be a heck of a year out there, but you primarily do the Marcellus-Utica, right? That's your niche area.
That's my beat. So everything I write about, I try to make sure there's a connection to it. Sometimes I do zoom the lens out a little bit. Like today, for instance. So I wrote a story, I noticed a press release about the had been the current chief operating officer of Seneca Resources, which is one of our big drillers in the Marcellus-Utica, is leaving to become the CEO of a company in Australia. And he's going to go drill in Australia instead. And I sort of, I think I probably provided a take that I don't think anyone else provided, which is, okay, is there a connection here? And well, as it turns out, there kind of is, because the basin in Australia he's going to go drill in is called the Beetaloo, and it's routinely compared to the Marcellus. In fact, it might be bigger than the Marcellus as far as production capabilities go. And so, this company has hired an expert in the Marcellus to come and recreate the Marcellus, over in Australia. So, technically, no, I guess it's not about the Marcellus, so like there's, a landowner isn't going to benefit from that necessarily, but it's interesting. And that's sort of my measure. It just sort of catches my interest, and it says, wow, that's kind of neat, And I think if I think it's kind of neat, maybe other people think it's kind of neat too.
Well, it's connecting the dots.
Yeah.
I mean, and who knows? I mean, you connect that dot over there, and pretty soon more might be connecting over there,
Yeah.
because there's carbon capture projects happening over there with companies that are drilling over here, and pretty soon you start getting the supply chain, whether it's Baker Hughes or Halliburton. That's a global supply chain anyways, so all of a sudden those people are being shifted around, and we got ourselves a Crocodile Dundee Part 2. Well, I think it'd be
That's
Part
right.
3 now, because Part 2 already happened. So the Australian invasion from the 80s. Oh, wasn't that fun? But well, sir, we should probably get running here. I'm looking at the clock, and I appreciate the time, and we'll have to catch you down the road. Any final plugs? Subscribe?
No, subscribers are important, and they're the ones that make it all work, and I appreciate them, and I try to tell them that on a regular basis, that I really appreciate that they hand me that. And I've had some of my subscribers. I started to charge in 2012, and I still have a pretty good number of people that have paid me every year since then. So, hats off to them. I really do appreciate it.
Well, there you go, folks. Jim Willis. He's a lot like me at times. Has to sing for his supper. Whether that's how it goes when I call us. We're in the third world of media. people like us, that's kind of
Yeah.
the way we are, independent. So, Marcellus Drilling News, and we'll catch you on the flip side here, folks. I'm going to hit pause now.